So another key element to our role, as I mentioned earlier on in the first video, I said that we will be doing a video about preparation, distraction and post-procedural. Well, during the hospital visit, this is where distraction comes into play. And I think there are lots of different understandings of what distraction may be. And I think naturally people assume that distraction is to get a book or a toy or mask over what's happening when a child is having a procedure. And actually that's not always the right way to go. I think a lot of children, actually need a voice, need to have a choice with what happens to them and how they have their procedures, and by including them in that journey of care actually makes for a better,
So breaking it down into steps.
Yeah, so, we mentioned before about hospital passports, and, I use them with a lot of my patients, and in that would be a procedure plan for if they're having a blood test, say. And an example of that would be giving the child a choice to whether they have the tourniquet band over their clothes or whether they have it on their skin, because actually it pinches. So that's the first step that I break it down into. The second step would then be choosing if they want cold spray, choosing if they want numbing cream. So that child knows that they've got to have a blood test and knows what the end result is, but giving them little steps and little choices throughout that really makes a massive difference, because they get some control back.
Even things like where they're going to sit. Do they want to sit on a parent's lap? Do they want a cuddle? Do they want to
sit on their own?
Do they want to sit on the chair or the bed? Little choices like that just make them feel involved.
And I think asking them, I always ask my patients if they want distraction or if they don't, because I feel like, we assume that they do because it's so scary that they can't watch. And actually, particularly children that are coming in long term that have to have these procedures every week, you almost need to give them the coping technique. Our role is to provide them with coping techniques so they can eventually do it without us, and so that actually they don't need a play specialist, but they're happy, comfortable, to empower them to advocate for themselves, to empower them to speak to professionals, to empower their parents to do that for them. So these little choices, step by step, are key for us. And I think 9 times out of 10, especially with my patients, they actually say that they want to look and they don't want the distraction, because the fear of the unknown and not being able to see anything is actually worse than watching what is happening, because again, we need to reassure them that it's not so scary, and it may hurt for a few seconds, but once that few seconds are over, it's actually okay, and to praise them and reassure them of how quickly they've recovered from that, so that it prevents future medical trauma. Because I think the more we distract and cover everything up, the worse it is. So some children will want distraction and won't want to look, which is again absolutely fine, but some will. So I think choices and inclusion within their care is absolutely key.
And having that trust in your child to make those choices as well. Yeah. So if they're saying, actually, I want to look, let them. It's going to really empower your child.
And if they've got a procedure plan, I think sometimes they think, I have to do it step by step. That may alter every single time they come into hospital, because
that's
actually,
fine, isn't it?
Yeah, they may say, I want to look, and then at the last minute, they're just not quite brave enough to do that last bit. So then that's where I would step in as a play specialist and say, you've done so well, we've got to this point, you can't quite do the last bit, so I'm going to count for you, and when I say go, we're all going to go together. And actually, sometimes you can give them too much control, where it's too big a task for them to be able to make that choice, because they've gone into fight or flight or panic mode.
But also to remember that screaming and shouting, that's okay.
It's okay.
It doesn't mean that they're not brave. That's okay. Yeah. So telling them as well, if you want to shout, if you want to scream, that's okay.
Yeah, you just need to stay still, or whatever the steps are that you need for whatever scan. If you're in an MRI scan, you need to be still. If you're having a blood test, actually, as long as your arm's still, it doesn't matter then if you cry or scream or have a cuddle.
And that doesn't mean that you're not brave.
No, it doesn't. Even to come into hospital, they're brave. So I think that the key there is, be honest, give them a choice, and then give them coping techniques to move forward, so that then if they have to come into hospital again or have other things, it's not such a daunting task, because they've overcome one of their fears, and then you can kind of break down the other worries.
Making a positive experience.
Yeah.